There was a time when everything inside you felt loud. Your thoughts were restless, your emotions unpredictable. You questioned your beliefs, your identity, your purpose. The world you once trusted began to feel artificial, like a stage play where everyone memorized lines but forgot the truth. You didn't wake up one day and decide to awaken. Awakening chose you, quietly, gradually, like a whisper that refused to disappear. And in the beginning, it felt like losing everything. Old friendships faded because your energy changed. Conversations that once excited you began to feel empty. You started noticing patterns in people, fear, masks, repetition. Not because you judged them, but because you finally saw clearly. This confusion was never a mistake. It was initiation. According to Jung, awakening is not about becoming someone new. It is about becoming who you always were beneath conditioning, beneath fear, beneath expectation. And when that process begins to end, something powerful shifts. You stop fighting yourself, not because you solved every problem, but because you stopped running from your own shadow. For years, you may have battled parts of yourself you didn't understand. Anger, jealousy, fear, sadness. You tried to suppress them, hide them, pretend they didn't exist. But awakening teaches a different truth. Healing does not come from rejection. It comes from acceptance. And when your awakening nears completion, your shadow no longer terrifies you. It becomes your teacher. You begin to notice that silence feels safer than noise. Not lonely silence, but peaceful silence. You no longer need constant distraction. You don't chase validation. You don't crave approval from people who never truly saw you. You can sit alone and feel whole. This is one of the deepest transformations when your presence becomes enough for yourself. In earlier stages, you may have searched desperately for meaning. Books, videos, signs, symbols. You looked for confirmation that your path mattered. But now, meaning finds you. In small moments, in simple breath, in the way sunlight touches a wall. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud. Just quiet awareness that life itself is sacred. This is not boredom. This is mastery. Another subtle sign appears in how you handle conflict. There was a time when arguments consumed you. Words replayed in your mind. You felt misunderstood, judged, attacked. But now, something inside you refuses to react the same way. You respond slower, speak less, listen more, not because you are weak, but because you finally understand the cost of emotional chaos. Your peace has become more valuable than winning. And this is where many people misunderstand awakening. They believe enlightenment means constant happiness, permanent positivity. But true completion looks different. You still feel sadness, still feel grief, still feel anger. The difference is, you are no longer controlled by them. Emotions pass through you, instead of trapping you. This emotional freedom is one of the clearest signs that your awakening cycle is ending. You no longer chase people who don't choose you. In the past, you may have tried to fix everyone, heal everyone, save everyone. You carried burdens that were never yours. But awakening teaches a painful truth. Not everyone wants healing. Not everyone is ready for growth. And when your awakening matures, you stop forcing connection. You allow distance. You respect your own energy. You become selective, not out of arrogance, but out of wisdom. Relationships shift naturally. Some disappear, others deepen, and a few rare souls appear who recognize your silence without explanation. This is not isolation. This is alignment. Another powerful transformation happens in your relationship with fear. Fear once controlled your decisions. It told you what not to say, where not to go, who not to become. But now, fear feels smaller, not gone, but quieter. You still feel uncertainty, but it no longer paralyzes you. You take action despite discomfort. You trust your inner voice even when logic doubts it. This trust is not blind faith. It is earned confidence. Confidence built through surviving your own storms. You begin to notice that life feels less chaotic, even when challenges appear. Not because problems vanished, but because your response changed. You don't panic the way you used to. You don't collapse under pressure. Instead, you pause, observe, respond with intention. This shift reveals a deeper truth. Awakening was never about changing the world outside you. It was about transforming the world within you. One of the most mysterious signs appears in how you experience time. In earlier stages, you rushed, worried about the future, regretted the past. But now, time feels different, slower, fuller, more meaningful. You are present in ways that once felt impossible. You notice sounds, details, patterns, not because you force attention, but because your mind finally rests. This presence is not accidental. It is the reward of deep inner work. Another sign emerges when you stop needing spiritual labels. You no longer obsess over titles, awakened, enlightened, chosen, gifted, because you understand something deeper. Growth is not identity. Growth is movement, and true awakening ends the need to prove your spirituality. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need recognition. Your transformation speaks for itself. Quietly, this is where Jung's teachings become deeply relevant. He believed the ultimate goal of awakening was individuation, the integration of all parts of the self into one unified identity, not perfection, integration. And when this integration happens, life begins to feel simpler, not easier, but clearer. You understand your values, your boundaries, your purpose. You stop imitating others. Stop comparing your journey. Stop chasing borrowed dreams. You begin creating your own path, even if it looks strange to others. And perhaps the final sign, the most powerful of all, is this. You feel gratitude, even for the pain. You begin to recognize that every heartbreak shaped your strength. Every loss forced your growth. Every moment of darkness pushed you toward awareness. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was meaningless. Even suffering became sacred. This is not denial of pain. This is transformation of pain. And when you reach this stage, your awakening does not end with fireworks or dramatic revelation. It ends quietly, like dawn replacing night. Gradually, softly, inevitably, you wake up one day and realize the person who once struggled to survive has become someone capable of living fully, not perfect, not finished, but awake in a new way. And that is when life truly begins. Call to action, empowering closing. If these signs felt familiar, if something inside you whispered, "This is me," then your journey has not been meaningless. You were not lost. You were transforming. And the world needs people who have walked through darkness and returned with wisdom instead of bitterness. Your awakening was never about escaping reality. It was about becoming strong enough to face it, consciously. So if this message reached you at the right moment, honor that feeling. Write in the comments, "I am ready for my next chapter." Let your voice be heard. Let your presence be known. And if this message stirred something deep within you, support the journey by liking this video, subscribing to Inner Bloom, and joining a community of souls who refuse to sleep through life. Because awakening may feel lonely at times, but you were never meant to walk alone. Your journey is not ending. It is evolving. And the best part of your story is only just beginning. The moment your awakening settles, something else begins to rise. Not chaos, not confusion, but responsibility. Because once you see clearly, you cannot pretend blindness anymore. You begin to notice how easily people drift through life without questioning anything. How routines replace purpose. How fear disguises itself as comfort. And while others remain asleep in familiar patterns, you feel an inner pull towards something greater. Not louder, not more dramatic, just more meaningful. You start recognizing that awakening was never meant to be a destination. It was preparation. Preparation for a life lived with intention, with awareness, with courage. And this realization changes how you move through the world. You stop chasing approval. The need to be liked slowly dissolves. You realize how much of your old identity was built around pleasing others, fitting in, avoiding conflict, hiding your truth just to stay accepted. But now, your truth matters more than comfort. Not in an aggressive way, not in a rebellious way, but in a calm, grounded way that doesn't beg for permission. You speak with fewer words, but deeper meaning. You no longer explain yourself endlessly. You no longer argue just to be understood. You let silence hold space where noise once lived. This quiet confidence becomes your new language, and people notice. Some feel drawn to you without knowing why. Others feel uncomfortable around your presence, not because you did anything wrong, but because clarity unsettles those still hiding from themselves. Your energy begins to act like a mirror. It reflects truth back to others, sometimes gently, sometimes painfully. Some will thank you for it. Others will distance themselves. A few may even misunderstand you. But none of that shakes you the way it once did, because you understand something profound now. Not everyone is meant to walk beside you forever. Some people were chapters, not the whole book. This realization hurts at first. Letting go always does. But with time, you begin to see the wisdom behind every ending. You understand that growth requires space. Space to breathe. Space to evolve. Space to become someone your past self would barely recognize. And in that space, your purpose begins to reveal itself. Not like a lightning bolt. Not like a loud announcement from the sky. But like a slow unfolding, petal by petal, layer by layer. You begin to feel called towards something that feels natural, yet unfamiliar. Something that feels aligned, yet slightly terrifying. That fear is not a warning. It is an invitation to step beyond survival, into creation. Because surviving your awakening was only the beginning. Now comes the deeper phase, living from what you have learned. You start choosing peace intentionally, not occasionally, but daily. You walk away from unnecessary drama. You avoid environments that drain your spirit. You become protective of your time, your energy, your attention, not selfish, but sacred. You begin to understand that energy is currency. Where you invest it determines what grows in your life. And slowly, your life begins to feel lighter, not because responsibilities disappear, but because resistance disappears. You stop fighting reality, stop arguing with what is. Instead, you learn to respond with awareness rather than reaction. This shift feels subtle, but its effects are powerful. Situations that once triggered anger now spark curiosity. Moments that once caused anxiety now invite patience. Even challenges begin to feel like teachers rather than enemies. You start trusting life in ways you never thought possible. Not blindly, but wisely. And this trust creates something beautiful inside you, resilience. A resilience that doesn't come from hardness, but from flexibility. From knowing that storms pass, that pain transforms, that endings carry hidden beginnings. You realize you are stronger than the fears that once ruled you. And with that strength comes compassion, not just for others, but for yourself. You stop punishing yourself for past mistakes. Stop replaying old regrets. Stop wishing you had known better back then. Because now you understand. You did the best you could with the awareness you had. And that realization frees you. Forgiveness becomes natural, not forced, not artificial, but sincere. You forgive people who hurt you, not because they deserved it, but because you deserved peace. You release anger that once felt justified. You let go of resentment that once felt protective, not forgetting, but freeing yourself from the weight of carrying it. And as this weight lifts, your mind becomes clearer. Decisions feel easier. Boundaries feel natural. Your inner voice grows stronger. You begin to trust your intuition without constant doubt. That quiet knowing inside you becomes your compass. It doesn't shout. It whispers. But its whispers feel stronger than noise. You start recognizing patterns before they repeat. You sense dishonesty before it unfolds. You notice opportunities before they fully appear. Not because you gained supernatural powers, but because awareness sharpened your perception. Awakening refined your senses. And with this clarity comes responsibility again. You realize that your presence influences others more than your words ever could. Your calm becomes contagious. Your patience becomes an example. Your growth becomes permission for others to grow. People begin asking you questions they once kept hidden. They share their struggles, their doubts, their fears, not because you claim wisdom, but because you embody it. And this is where your journey transforms into service. Not forced service, not heroic sacrifice, but natural guidance. You don't try to save everyone. You simply show what healing looks like in real time. You become proof that transformation is possible. And this realization fills you with something unexpected: humility. Because you understand that awakening did not make you superior. It made you responsible. Responsible for your choices, your reactions, your impact on others. You begin living with greater awareness of consequences. You think before speaking, feel before reacting, observe before judging. This mindfulness reshapes your relationships. You listen more deeply, speak more intentionally, love more consciously. Love itself begins to change. It becomes less about possession and more about presence, less about control and more about understanding. You stop expecting perfection from people. Stop demanding constant reassurance. Instead, you offer acceptance without losing yourself in the process. This balanced love becomes one of the most beautiful signs that your awakening matured. Not dramatic love, not chaotic love, but steady love. And steady love creates steady lives. You begin to notice how your environment reflects your inner state. Clutter reduces, chaos fades. Your surroundings start feeling calmer, more intentional. Even your habits begin to shift. You wake up with clearer thoughts. You move with more awareness. You rest without guilt. Simple routines become sacred rituals. Drinking water becomes mindfulness. Walking becomes meditation. Breathing becomes grounding. Nothing magical, yet everything meaningful.